The Crimson Door. In a remote, fog-shrouded town surrounded by an ancient forest, stood an abandoned house the locals called the House of Whispers. It was a place that even birds and animals avoided, shunned for decades due to the dark stories that clung to it like ivy. Most notably, the house had a crimson door, a deep, almost bleeding red that appeared freshly painted, as if inviting someone to come closer. Rumor had it that anyone who dared enter through the crimson door would disappear, never to be seen again. Legend said the door wasn't just painted red but was stained with the blood of those it had consumed over the years. Some claimed that if you pressed your ear to it, you could hear faint, desperate voices whispering from beyond, cries for help, or even the chilling laughter of something inhuman. Yet, the horror stories only fueled the curiosity of those brave or foolish enough to approach it. On a gray autumn evening, with the sky heavy and the air thick with a sense of foreboding, a group of 5 teenagers decided to test the legend. Led by Ethan, a skeptic who dismissed the tales as nothing more than superstition, they set out to uncover the truth. They wore thick jackets to ward off the cold, but each felt a chill in their bones that no clothing could keep out. The forest seemed darker than usual, as though it were swallowing the last rays of daylight, leaving only an eerie, haunting glow around the house. When they reached the doorstep, they hesitated. The crimson door loomed before them, tall and ominous, casting an unnatural shadow. It almost seemed to pulse with life, beckoning them closer. Ethan, with a mixture of excitement and dread, raised his fist and knocked 3 times. The sound echoed through the house, loud and unnatural, as though it resonated far beyond the walls, reaching into a dark, unseen realm. They waited in silence, their breaths visible in the frigid air. Then, slowly, the crimson door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness within. The inside was a black void, as if the house had been hollowed out, leaving only emptiness. The air that seeped out was cold and damp, carrying the scent of rotting earth. The teenagers exchanged nervous glances, but curiosity compelled them forward. One by one, they stepped inside, swallowed by the darkness. The instant the last one crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. They turned to find that the door had vanished entirely, leaving behind only a solid, cold wall. The realization hit them with a wave of dread. They were trapped. As they began to explore, strange things started happening. The house seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in an unsettling rhythm, as though it had a life of its own. Faint whispers floated through the air, not words, but twisted sounds, almost like echoes from a place far away. The hallways were dark, and their flashlights flickered weakly, casting distorted shadows that seemed to twist and stretch unnaturally. They wandered through narrow, suffocating corridors, the floors creaking beneath their feet in a rhythmic pattern that sounded disturbingly like a heartbeat. As they turned a corner, they saw strange symbols carved into the walls, ancient, alien-looking symbols that pulsed and shifted whenever they looked away. It was as if the walls themselves were alive, mocking them, trapping them deeper within a maze they couldn't escape. Suddenly, they caught sight of a figure standing at the end of one hallway, a shadowy, indistinct shape with glowing red eyes. It was tall and thin, its limbs elongated, bending at unnatural angles. The figure watched them, unmoving, its eyes fixated on them with a hunger that sent a chill through their souls. They could feel its gaze even when they turned away, like icy fingers pressing down on the back of their necks. Panicked, they tried to run, but every hallway led them back to that same figure. No matter how many turns they took, the creature was always waiting, watching. They began to realize the house was shifting, changing shape with every step, guiding them deeper into its twisted heart. After what felt like hours or maybe minutes, time had become meaningless. They stumbled into a room that seemed oddly familiar. In the center was the crimson door, standing alone, as if daring them to try and open it again. But this time, the door looked different. It was warped, its surface twisted and rippling like flesh. Dark veins pulsed beneath the surface, and the color seemed deeper, richer, almost as if it were bleeding. Ethan stepped forward, his hand trembling as he reached for the handle. But as his fingers brushed against it, the door shivered, and a voice, cold, mocking, filled with malice, whispered from within, "You're already home." The door's surface began to shift, twisting and reshaping itself into faces twisted in agony. frozen in silent screams. They realized, with mounting horror, that these were the faces of those who had entered before them. Souls trapped forever within the door. The whispers grew louder, now screams and cries for help, but distorted, as if coming from underwater, each voice adding to the haunting symphony of despair. The door opened, but instead of the outside world, it revealed a vision of darkness, a realm of shadows writhing and shifting like something alive. The ground beneath their feet started to sink, as if the house itself was swallowing them. Ethan and his friends struggled, but it was as if invisible hands were pulling them down, dragging them into the very walls. They screamed, but their voices were muffled, fading into the chorus of trapped souls that echoed through the house. One by one, they were pulled into the darkness, swallowed by the crimson door. The last thing they saw was that shadowy figure standing over them, its eyes gleaming with satisfaction, watching as they disappeared into the walls. The next morning, the townspeople noticed the house looked slightly different. The paint seemed fresher, and the crimson door was as vibrant as ever. But if anyone dared to come close, they'd swear they could hear faint, desperate whispers from beyond the door. And if they listened long enough, they'd hear 5 new voices, begging to be released. To this day, the crimson door waits, silent and patient, for the next unwitting soul who dares to knock. For it knows, once the door opens, it will feed once again, and the House of Whispers will never be empty.